Welcome back to another episode of Zoom Action, KSR's basketball breakdown show. As always, I am Zach Gagan, joined by Coach Brandon Ramsey over there on the side. Today, we are going to do nothing but Zoom Action talk. We're going to live up to the show's namesake. I actually mentioned to Brandon and Steven earlier today that I kind of missed the floppy action name, but no floppy action from Coach Pope this season all that often, if at all. I don't know if we've seen any floppy action from him, honestly. So we were right to change the name, and we're doing four Zoom action plays from the Louisville win from this past Saturday in Rupp Arena. Kentucky won that game 93-85. It was one of those situations where Kentucky was up 6 to 10 to 11 points pretty much the entire second half. Every time they needed a big bucket, it felt like Lamont Butler was the guy who stepped up and hit a big three. But it was a fun game overall, great for the fan base. We had a little bit of scrappiness, everything you want out of the UK U of L rivalry. Up next, we've got Ohio State on Saturday, the CBS Sports Classic. Stephen will be joining Jack Pilgrim up there in New York for that one. We'll do a little bit of a preview, just a light preview at the very end of the episode. But Brandon, let's go ahead and dive straight in. I'll pull up our play here. We've got four Zoom action plays, like I mentioned. The first three are all I think they're all in the first 10 minutes of the first half. They're just it's pretty much the exact same setup. It all happens on the left side of the floor. It all flows with Amari Williams kind of acting as the hub, and all three results are perfect, beautiful baskets. And it's just the way they get these baskets out of the same set is really why Brandon wanted to go through this. Like I said, live up to our namesake. So the first one here is very simple. Something we've seen, we've talked about. Like I said, we've talked about this play pretty much plenty of times here so far. So Amari Williams or Brandon, well, let's start here. Jackson Robinson sets the down screen for Amari Williams to get the zoom action going. Amari does not give the dish to Andrew Carr. He instead flips it to Jackson Robinson for just who steps back and hits a wide open three instead of coming over that screen instead of coming around Amari Williams. But Brandon, we're going to dissect all the. We'll talk less and less about each play as we go along because they'll kind of mimic each other. It's really just the end result that we're focusing on here. But set up the entire play for us first here before we actually dive into what happens. Explain why this play or this set is something that was proved to be really effective against Louisville and a pretty smart coach in Pat Kelsey.
Yeah, we saw really the crux, in my opinion, of Kentucky's offense, and we've talked about on this show, and yesterday we'll get to dive into the namesake Zoom action a little bit more, and we've talked about it on a handful of episodes so far. But what we've discussed with Zoom action is how multiple it can be. It's one of the most basic plays in basketball, one of the most common plays in basketball now, where it's just a down screen into a handoff. But
Mhm.
the way that Kentucky operates, you're able to read and react based on what the defense gives you. And when you have skilled players involved, like an Amari Williams who can pass it, Andrew Carr who can come off even at 6'11" and handle it a little bit, he can shoot it a little bit, he can pass it. Obviously, there's a lot of attention paid to Jackson Robinson anytime he's involved due to his passing ability. But the setup here is just what zoom action is. It's a down screen set by Jackson Robinson. Andrew Carr's coming off, and then Amari Williams is kind of dribbling into what would be a handoff, but he just decides to keep this one, probably just because, handing it off to your 6'11" four-man isn't something that you do a lot. I think Andrew Carr certainly is skilled enough to turn the corner there, but his defender went under. There's no real action to be had there. So now Jackson Robinson is just sort of in hand-to-hand combat here with his defender, and we know he just doesn't need very much space to
Mhm.
get a shot off. So he, starts to operate off of the handoff, but ends up just sort of stepping behind it, and he gets enough separation here in between his man and himself to get this shot off because he simply does not need much time and space. So he's just reading and reacting to the defense. He felt more comfortable kind of stepping back into some space there as he was able to play with his defender. And instead of coming off the handoff, he just settled behind and knocked in a little three to get Kentucky going here early in the game.
Yeah, and if you go back kind of to where the play starts, Brandon, uh, I've mentioned it before on the show that you want Andrew Carr to shoot more, but he just kind of really hasn't this season for whatever reason. So that's probably part of why maybe Amari didn't make this pitch back here because there's a good chance that Andrew Carr would be open for that shot, but that's a shot that Jackson and Kobe Other Almanor, like those guys would take that shot. Andrew Carr just hasn't really shown the ability to take that shot, which is or the willingness, I guess, to want to take that shot consistently. That's perfectly fine. It keeps the action flowing. But then you've got Jackson Robinson being guarded by, I think it was Rainey Smith is his name.
Yeah.
I never know if it was Ryan or Rainey, but he was the smallest guy on the floor pretty much the whole time, other than Travis Perry. But whenever Travis Perry was in, Rainey Smith was guarding that guy. So or he was guarding Perry. So he wasn't exactly, the top tier defender. And I think that a lot of this is just Jackson kind of reading what is being presented to him. Rainey thinks that Jackson's going to come around and take this handoff. He kind of gets stuck on that Amari screen real quick. And this is the beauty. Did you know Jackson Robinson has like a 6'11 wingspan? I think it's 6'11.
Wow.
6'11,
Yeah.
maybe even 7. So it's long. And he's already 6'6". So this is not a lot of space for most players, but for Jackson Robinson and maybe Kobe, well, definitely Kobe, this is more than enough space. Rainey Smith is just not tall enough to get to this shot and contest it, and that's what allows Jackson to read and react. Notice that he can just take the handoff, step right back, and he's got an easy wide open three. Good easy play from Amari here. He does this pretty much the next two plays as well. I've got another note on Amari that I'll mention once we get to the third one, but this is just an easy read and react from Jackson to get himself this three. So this is a similar setup. It's going to start with is it Amari or Brandon? I guess who
This
is
is Brandon this time, it looks like.
So this is Brandon on this one. He is the benefactor or the hub of this, and Kobe ends up being the benefactor of the play here. You've got Jackson setting another down screen here, and instead of the Andrew Carr situation where we just saw where he does not pitch the ball back, you've got an excellent 3-point shooter, the best in the country. He's at least 2 feet behind the line here. Chucky Hepburn was really just running around, kind of doing whatever he could to muck things up, and it allowed him, I don't know if allow is the right word, but it prevented him from kind of being as close to his defenders as maybe Coach Kelsey would have liked to. He tries to kind of jet through this screen here from Jackson, and it's just not enough because Kobe's such a great shooter. Brandon does a good job as well of kind of closing that gap as well, and then you just get a wide open three for the best shooter in the country. But Brandon, go ahead and take us into your mind here and tell us what are the major differences between this last play and this one?
Yeah, so the major difference really ends up being the fact that Kobe Bray is coming off instead of Andrew Carr. And you and I both, Zach, I think we are very much on team Andrew Carr shoot more threes.
Hmm.
So I wouldn't hate at some point this season to watch Andrew Carr's defender go underneath the zoom action like he did in that first clip, hand it off to Andrew Carr, let him settle behind and shoot a three. I would be a fan of that shot, but for one reason or another, right now, that doesn't seem to be something that Carr himself or Kentucky or both parties really want to get to. But obviously, it's what you want to get to. It's really the perfect shot for
Hmm.
Kobe Brea because of the pressure that he puts on the defense in this sort of screening action. Louisville is switching this down screen. But as Zach mentioned, part of Chucky Hepburn's job defensively and part of what can make him so valuable, but what also can be used against him like Kentucky did, is that he's more of an agent of chaos defensively.
A free safety.
Yes, yeah, he is very much a free safety. He has free reign to sort of run around, create havoc, create chaos, and almost guard all 5 positions within a possession. Well, that makes it really difficult to switch because you can even see here, like, he's sagged back, kind of ready to help on something at the rim, making sure nobody slips to the basket, that sort of thing. But now, all of a sudden, he's being asked to switch out on the best shooter in the country, and he's
Hmm.
8 feet from the 3-point line. So right now, I guess if I could go back a millisecond here, right now you're in the exact same situation that first clip was, except Andrew Carr kept curling around. This time, because it's Kobe Brea and not Andrew Carr, he just settles behind, gets the handoff, and shoots it. Andrew Carr was in this exact same position. It's just different personnel gets you different looks. And obviously, you would rather have Kobe Brea settling behind the handoff for a three than Andrew Carr, even though we both are proponents of him shooting more. You're going
Hmm.
to take a 50+% 3-point shooter getting off a relatively clean look, quite literally shoot them all Kobe, as I would say during the
As
game.
you coined.
You want this at every chance you can get it. So when we all started watching some of the BYU film coming out of the summer, and we were getting excited about what Coach Pope could bring offensively. And each time there was a commitment, you sort of started to put the pieces together in your head of, what are the shots that this guy can get? What are the shots that this guy could get? Well, this was the shot that I think we all envisioned Kobe Brea getting, was just settling behind the handoff. There's a little bit of a defensive breakdown, and he gets a three via the zoom action.
And another, if Kobe doesn't get this ball, you've got Jackson Robinson in the exact same situation he
Right.
was 4 or 5 minutes earlier. With the same defender on him, he could curl over that screen. He could step back again. At that point, Rainey Smith is probably even more aware of Jackson trying to step back and shoot that three, which opens up back cuts and things like that. Speaking of back cuts or backdoor cuts, Brandon, if you want to go ahead and take us to our third play, which is not that much longer. I think it's maybe 3 minutes later in this actual game, and it goes back to the exact same zoom action set on this left side of the floor. Instead
Probably.
of
There we go.
instead of
Sorry.
having Brandon be the hub in this one, you go back to Amari. And this is, if some might remember, Brandon, if you, yeah, just pause it for a second. If you might remember, we were talking about Amari Williams maybe is doing 10% too much. And that 10% too much was trying to be the initiator of the offense and drive straight to the rim and then maybe put the ball on the floor and either pass it out, which he didn't do too often, or just kind of chuck up a bad shot. He did have he hit his hook shot, at least in this game. It was early against Louisville. He had like a little back down that he got himself into and he made it. But ever since we talked about that, which was probably 2 or 3 games ago, he has not really done any initiating. It's a lot of the dribble handoff situations that we've seen. And this here, you see, again, you've got Rainey Smith in this corner who is definitely expecting, he probably knows what's happening. He's going to expect a three-pointer coming, as is the guy that's guarding Lamont Butler here. Both of these guys, at this point, they probably know they've read the scout from Pat Kelsey. He's going to alert these guys that zoom action is something that Kentucky's going to run into a lot. And you have both of these Louisville defenders essentially expecting Kobe Brea to come in and shoot this three. And as it plays out, where you see Louisville's defender here, he's not in a good position to defend a backdoor cut. He's very much leaning already outside to the 3 point line. That's where he wants to initiate him or try and stop Kobe in his tracks. And then Kobe makes just a great cut. It's really a simple cut. There's nothing special to it. Just locks eyes with Amari. A great connection between those two. Amari is able to float that pass over his defender, and you get Kobe open for a wide open dunk because their help defense was just not quick enough to get there. So when you have a guy like Kobe who's shooting 55 or 58% from three, whatever it is, you're going to open up backdoor cuts like this. And we saw a beautiful example of it here. And this is the third successful zoom action play within the first 10 minutes of this game.
Yeah, one of the things that you started to be able to see it open up in that last play that we just walked through, but we can show it here as well. If the defense jumps out even a second earlier here, and again, this is what makes zoom action so multiple, so hard to guard. If he's just a second sooner, you could have just as easily gotten Lamont Butler slipping to the basket here as you could have gotten Kobe Brea curling around. It
You could
obviously
almost have Kobe cut right there.
yeah,
Just go
yeah,
straight to the basket.
right. Because with his guy taking Lamont and obviously this much space in between the switch, yes, he could have cut along the baseline. Lamont could have slipped it, or you can get to what we got to here with but because he's so concerned about taking away the three, you can see that he's jumping out here in order to take Brea. And honestly, it's bad positioning, but it's honestly not that bad of defense. If I'm Coach Kelsey or whatever
58% 3 point shooters going to the
right,
3 point line.
right, yeah. I mean, if I have the scout, if I'm the Illinois assistant that had the scout for this game, I'm spending all week talking about taking away Kobe Brea from three, and I'm trying to instill fear in our defenders that Kobe Brea is going to spray it in 50 times if you aren't aggressively taking him away. And I'm talking about how you have to switch out aggressively to take away the three. So it's just part of using defensive aggressiveness against you. And that's what you get for a 50+%, 53.1 to be exact, 3 point shooter, is that he's switching out aggressively. He's really doing the right thing. He's doing what he's told to do. But because Kentucky reads and reacts very well, he knows to just curl it in there. And this is a really good pass from Amari Williams. Quick, he kind of leads him, throws it to where only Brea can catch it, and
Hmm.
then we get an easy dunk.
And even, you've got Owe in the corner there whose 3-point shooting numbers are going down a little bit. And Chucky is even leaning it like he's already kind of cheating already, but he's almost just too small and just not quick enough on that recovery. You've got someone like Ansley Almanor out there on the wing as well, so they can't leave him open. It makes for a very difficult action to guard, especially when you've got all these veteran Kentucky guys who have seen enough defenses that they can kind of manipulate it as it's happening in real time. Um, so let's go ahead and just jump right into the very last play. Brandon, in my personal opinion, I think this was the biggest play of the whole game. And Louisville, this is the point where Louisville just kept chopping away, kept chopping away. They did not let the lead get to more than, I think, 11 points. They did a really good job of always answering. Kentucky really needed a bucket here to kind of ice the game away. And I think that's effectively what it did at this point. It made it a 9-point game with 90 seconds left. It was just going to be too difficult for Louisville to overcome. But again, you've got a very similar concept on the left side of the floor again. You're running your offense as with Garrison as kind of the whatever you want to call him, the playmaker in this sense. Lamont again is the guy who sets the down screen. Jackson comes up, and again, look where Chucky Hedburn is guarding. He's guarding for the three only. He is pretty much only expecting Kentucky or Jackson to try and get a three here. And again, poor Rainey Smith getting picked on as well. They notice that whenever he's in, they try and include him in these actions too. These two guys are just not big enough to deal with Jackson and his wingspan and his height. And then you get a situation where Jackson is going to come up here and potentially take this handoff from Brandon for a three. Chucky gets in his way to block the three, almost blocks him too much, like kind of forces Jackson to go to the hole, and it works out perfectly. But the best part about this play is this is a beautiful pass from Brandon Garrison. Floats it right over two defenders. Terrence Edwards in the corner here probably should have maybe stopped clapping his hands and got there a little bit sooner, but he doesn't, and it results in a very tough layup from Jackson. If we're being honest, like that's a hard shot to make, like on the catch like that, where you're pretty much catching it right underneath the basket, and you have to look like the second you look up, the goal's right there. So great play overall, great read, great pass, great finish. I think this was the best zoom action play of the show that we're going to show, honestly, Brandon. But what did you think of this one?
Yeah, so right off the bat here, you see, and I was kind of drawing the lines there as you saw while Zach was breaking it down. But right now, you have another slip opportunity again because
Hmm.
Chucky Hepburn is so aggressive here, jumping out to take away the three, and he's essentially denying that handoff almost. Zach mentioned how he's almost out too far and forced Jackson to curl this to the basket. But again, I think that's probably something that they were almost being told to do. Is like, hey, don't even let them come off and get that handoff. Get out there aggressively, take them away from three, make them reject the handoff, and we'll kind of keep them on a side over here. Well, Kentucky was able to use that against them, and some of the size, as you mentioned, has to do with that as well. You're able to throw it to a 6'6" cutting Jackson Robinson over a 6'1" or 6'2" with his hair, Chucky
Yeah,
Hepburn.
yeah,
And you can see right here, he's on the high side of Jackson Robinson. There's hand-to-hand combat again, and he just cuts right into this space. Two more things I want to really point out. One being, at this point in the game, I think Lamont Butler had already hit all 6 of his threes.
yes.
So look at how Smith is completely hugged up on him as he curls this one. The next part of this play, if Brandon Garrison doesn't throw this pass, is now, okay, Jackson Robinson didn't come off, so now, as we saw earlier, Lamont Butler's going to come off the handoff. Well, he's completely hugged up as opposed to being back here towards the basket, as he doesn't want to give up a 7th three to Lamont Butler. That's part of what gets Jackson Robinson open. And then the second thing, and you already pointed out the pass, Zach, what I really like about this play from Brandon Garrison is the confidence that it shows from him, because
Yes.
it was probably, I don't know, 90 seconds or so of gameplay. It might have not even been that. It was just a couple of possessions before this. He turned it over on a very similar pass.
Hmm.
Kentucky had a very similar offensive possession, and Brandon Garrison threw the ball out of bounds. It was a great look, just missed it a little bit. Well, you have another opportunity here, and it'd be real easy for him to just kind of eat it and hand it off to Lamont Butler to live to fight another day off the handoff. There really would be nothing wrong with that almost, but you wouldn't get a nice 2-point basket here from Jackson Robinson. If he didn't have the guts to throw that pass after just making a mistake, that shows, I think, three things. One, he's just really skilled and makes plays
Mhm.
because he's a good basketball player and he's not thinking about it. Two, the confidence he has in himself. And three, the confidence that Coach Pope and this staff continuously pour into these guys. I mean, I talked about it on Twitter with the last couple possessions, even after this clip, about I had a little bit of a no, 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 yes for that Ortega Owe three in a
Yeah.
very similar position to this one. And then even probably more so on the and one that he finished at the rim. And
Mhm.
I'm sitting here as the basketball coach thinking time and score. I would rather dribble it out for 15 seconds than have made that three or certainly have missed it, whatever. But I don't hate that he has the confidence to do it. And, it's one of was it Shannon Dawson or who was it that said, well, if it works, it's great, or whatever at Kentucky with the 2-point conversion.
Right.
So, it's one of those things where, yeah, it worked out. So it's great. But honestly, even if he misses it, I'm it's part of being a high volume 3-point shooting team. You have to
Mhm.
you have to allow guys to have a lot of confidence. You have to allow them to miss some shots, honestly, and that goes with the passing and the cutting that this team excels with as well. And we just showed for the clips here, Kentucky had their best cutting game, I thought, of the season against Louisville.
Mhm.
Passing is obviously a part of that as well, and then just the constant pressure that 3-point shooting puts on you. I mean, there's been a lot of people talk over the last few weeks about Kentucky's cold shooting. Well, obviously they snapped out of that a little bit with led by Lamont Butler hitting the 6 threes, but the most important thing about shooting, and obviously this changes if you stay cold forever, but when you're a team that people think can really shoot and you shoot a lot of them, it's the threat of shooting that gives you a lot of these opportunities. It doesn't matter that Kentucky's hasn't made 10 threes in a few games, or they were shooting 27, 28% over 3 or 4 games. Teams are still going to treat all these guys as dead eye shooters, whether they're making them or not, at least for now. So you see the benefits that reaps even when the threes aren't going in.
And to both the three or the cuts that we saw in this game from Jackson and Kobe, those two guys went 4 for 12 from three, so 33%. It's respectable, but like you said, the threat of that number, being higher is really what allows them to make those type of cuts. But yeah, Brandon Garrison, I don't think that kid lacks any confidence. He's got plenty to go around for all of us. So he was excellent in that second half overall. The hustle plays, the getting in the face of the Louisville players, like I thought it was awesome. I don't care if Louisville fans call him dirty; they can say whatever they want. He is no Clash Peters. So if you want to actually watch a dirty player, go watch Clash Peters play. Brandon Garrison is just like a newborn baby trying to run around there and play with other real, grown men, but he's just happens to be 7 feet tall. Um, and about the passing, this was actually Kentucky's second best assist percentage game of the season. They had 23 assists on 32 made baskets. I don't remember what the other better one was, but part of that was because you've got a guy like Chucky Hepburn, who, as good of a defender as he is, and Pope even mentioned this,
Yeah.
he kind of gets himself he by roaming so much, he kind of gets himself in weird situations. And we saw like this play is a great example of where he just kind of gets himself in a bad spot by trying to maybe do a little bit too much, and he leaves Jackson wide open for pretty much the biggest score of the game for Kentucky, the one that kind of iced it away. So zoom action plays are a lot of fun. It's funny. Like I knew what zoom action was before this season. Like we've seen it run sparingly, I guess, maybe over the years with Cal, but it's fun now because every time it happens live in the game, I'm like, oh, I'm like Leo DiCaprio from that meme. I'm like, oh, there's the zoom action right there. So it makes doing these videos a lot more fun. But Brandon, before we get out of here, let's give a quick little just breakdown on Ohio State. Kentucky plays Ohio State on Saturday at 5:30, I think, on
Yep.
CBS. Um, Ohio State is 7-4 now. I think they just beat Valpo, but they're down a couple of guys. They're down Michi Johnson, who's one of their better players. The Aaron Bradshaw situation is really weird. It sounds like he still could possibly play, I guess, on Saturday. He's technically available. He didn't play in the Valpo game, I don't think. If he did, then I apologize. He didn't. Okay. So yeah, they could be down potentially two important guys, but Kentucky's going to be a pretty significant favorite, I think, without Michi Johnson whenever that spread comes out tomorrow. Any just kind of wholesale thoughts on Ohio State that you have, or takes or anything? How do you think this game will play out? Anything like that before we get out of here?
I think the number one thing, and we talked about it before the Louisville game. We saw it happen some against Colgate, even that we didn't really expect. But you're going to have to guard the 3-point line in this game. Ohio State's not necessarily gunning it from three. I mean, that they shoot. I tweeted it out earlier today. I think 4 or 5 less threes per game than Kentucky, but they make them at a 40.6% clip. Now
Yeah.
that math changes a little bit with Michi Johnson out, but
Hmm.
honestly, the guy who's going to play more minutes in his place, John Mobley, the freshman guard, he is like he's got a burner. Like this
Yeah.
dude can flat out shoot. He's made 33s in 11 games at a 53.6% clip. So essentially, he's Kobe Bryant at this point in the season. Like the stats
Smaller
are
Kobe.
the stats are very similar
Hmm.
as 3-point shooters. So you're just going to get more Mobley in the absence of Michi Johnson. Now it would be even more dangerous if they could play together some minutes or whatever. So I'm not saying that they're better off without Michi because he's made 23s in his own right at about
Hmm.
36%. But you're trading a good shooter for a elite shooter.
Yeah.
So you have to take away the three. Ohio State is, I believe, tops in the country in 3-point percentage differential between offense and defense. They're offensively they shoot 40.6%. Defensively, they hold opponents to 28.4%.
Oof. Yeah.
So it really is going to come down to making sure you don't get shot out of the gym. That's the only thing really I think, and you saw this against Louisville, you were able to overcome great 3-point shooting from the Cardinals because you just executed at such a high level offensively. I think you'll be able to do that again against Ohio State. I think you'll still be able to have transition opportunities. I think you're going to execute in the half court. Kentucky should be able to dominate the boards a little bit in this one. Ohio State has not been a very good rebounding team. They're honestly pretty undersized, especially without
Hmm.
Aaron Bradshaw playing. So I think that you'll be able to see
Who doesn't
Kentucky
really
clean
rebound
up.
anyways, but
Yeah. Yeah, we know that firsthand. But Kentucky should be able to play a clean game on the glass. They shouldn't have any issues turning it over in this one. That's not really what Ohio State does defensively, but the great equalizer is the 3-point shot, and you're playing a team that does it as well as anybody in the country. So I think you'll need to see a renewed effort and urgency in taking away the three. I know that would make some people in Big Blue Nation happy that are sort of nitpicking some of the defensive breakdowns, especially over the last couple of games that are honestly warranted. Like there has been some slippage, I think, in guarding the perimeter, and that'll have to be better because certainly unlike Colgate and Ohio State and Louisville, I think are probably pretty similar talent wise. They're capable of beating you if you let them come out and make 10 to 15 threes. If
yeah.
you do a good job and you hold them to 8 threes, then I think it's gonna be really hard for them to score enough to win. But yeah, above all else, you gotta guard these guys from three.
Yeah, Ohio State definitely scores the ball well. They're averaging over 80 points a game right now. Kentucky's obviously in the 90s, so there's a big difference there, but they're a decent defensive team, like Brandon was mentioning. It's funny, like I've been doing this long enough now that I've seen like Devin Royal, Bruce Thornton, Junie Mobley. Like I've watched all these guys in high school. And Junie Mobley it's kind of funny because I remember when he was a junior in high school, Jack Pilgrim and I were getting to watch him, I think at Pangos in Las Vegas, and he was like, watch this kid. He shoots like Steph Curry. The kid shoots just like Steph Curry. The form is perfect. He's like Brandon said, he's a 6'1" Kobe Bryant. Like
Yeah,
it's impressive how this kid squeezes off shots. He's really, really good at it. I watched a game earlier this year where he was just lighting them up. So Junie Mobley's going to be a guy they really need to pay attention to. Bruce Thornton's a guy I remember watching as well. He's big. He's like a big 6'2". Like this kid's a bowling ball size. That'll be a very interesting matchup. Whether it's Ortega or Lamont Butler that kind of guards him, that'll be a fun one to watch. Devin Royal is also a really kind of bigger. I don't know if he's like a 2 or a 3 or whatever they would kind of classify him as. I think he's like a 6'5" kid. Let me double check that. 6'6",
he's 6'6",
210.
but honestly, Zach, like he almost plays the five for them. Like
Is that
like,
right?
when I'm talking about them being undersized, like there's
Yeah.
times where he's their five man.
Well, if you just look at their roster too, like they really don't have any contributors, like you said, that are over, 6'9".
Yeah,
Like
their
Sean
tallest guy
Stewart's
that they
6'9".
play
He
is
doesn't really
six
play.
nine Sean Stewart, the Duke transfer.
Yeah. So they have like guys that I've seen play a lot and like I know are good basketball players. I haven't necessarily followed them as much in college. Like Mobley still he's just a freshman, but that kid's really good. He can just shoot the lights out, man. Like that's gonna have to be objective 1A and 1B on defense. It's making sure that kid does not get open threes because he will splash home a bunch of them. Devin Royal and Bruce Thornton will be fun matchups. Especially if Devin Royal's playing the four or something and having to guard. Do you think that kind of allows maybe some more Andrew Carr at the five action if you're, especially if not Brandon, if Bradshaw's out? Do you does Pope maybe go a little bit smaller and try and fight smaller, or does he just say, hey, let's go tall the whole way and just overpower these guys?
I would certainly be fine with that. I mean, I've been a proponent, even with Garrison and Amari Williams playing well in my eyes. I've been a proponent of maybe stealing a few minutes a game with Andrew Carr at the five because I just think it makes you so dynamic offensively. And you're seeing Andrew Carr rebound the ball much better over these last few games. And I think that against a team like Ohio State, when they do go small, because there are like there's going to be times where Devin Royal is playing. So, certainly he's going to play the four all game, and he's going to play the five
Yeah.
some. So they're going to go smaller. And Amari Williams and Brandon Garrison, they can guard Devin Royal. There's no issue with that at all. And they would have
Mhm.
give him a hard time when he's defending them around the basket. But it would be interesting, I think, to kind of match small with small a little bit and see what it looks like playing Andrew Carr at the five some and see. And I think that's especially true if you find yourself in a game where you need to score more. Hopefully it's not because you're playing from behind or whatever, but if it's just a faster paced game and it's tracking towards being, you got to score 90 to win this one, well, then let's roll out the best offensive lineman up. And I think that there's a chance that's with Andrew Carr at the five. So that will be interesting. Something interesting to watch is how both of these teams kind of move the chess pieces around and match up with each other because the rosters are certainly, especially now with Bradshaw out, the
Mhm.
rosters are built a little bit differently, and that the Buckeyes are just relatively undersized in their front court.
Yeah, overall, this should be a game that Kentucky wins. I wouldn't say handily, but they should. We just saw Auburn beat the brakes off this team by 1,000 points. Kentucky's. I wouldn't say they're as good as well. Maybe with Broom out, they're probably better than Auburn. But with Broom, Auburn's arguably the best team in the country.
Mhm.
Kentucky's right up there with them. They should. I think they should win this game by double digits. I hope Bradshaw plays. Honestly, not because I want Kentucky to just kind of destroy him, because I never had any beef with Aaron Bradshaw or anything. The allegations are not good, I guess. So maybe in that sense, I hope he doesn't play. But it'll be interesting to just see how he's developed over the last year with his game and see if he's got any more flashes to him. His numbers have not been good. I think he's shooting like 40, maybe 35% from the field or something ridiculous. I can double check that real quick. He's shooting 38% from the field and he's 7'1", so that's not very good. Um, but he's only played 4 games this season, so we'll see if he steps back into this one. But Brandon, actually, look, before we end here, give us a score prediction and your MVP for Saturday.
All righty, I'm going to go Kentucky 91, Ohio State 78, and I will roll with Andrew Carr. Let's take Andrew Carr.
Andrew Carr at the five.
I think we got like 22 points and 7
Ooh,
rebounds coming. 4
I love
assists.
it.
22,
I love
7,
it.
and 4.
Love it. Yeah, I'm sticking with 91 as well for Kentucky, but I'm going to go 81 for Ohio State. So a 10-point win for the Cats. I will say Lamont Butler. He's going to have another big game. I don't think he'll
Do it.
hit 6 from three or make every single one of his shots, but I think he will have a fun day against Ohio State's point guards, and it just won't really be much of a matchup. I think he'll be able to out talent and out strength them pretty much the whole way, out veteran them, whatever term you want to use the whole way. So. Um, but we'll go ahead and get out of here, and we will see you all whenever we see you. We might do another post Ohio State breakdown as well. We've got a long gap in between games after this one. I think the next game is what, 10 days after that. They play
New Year's
Brown on New
Eve.
Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like a weird 2 o'clock game as well. That one. So
Yes.
I'm sure we'll do another Ohio State breakdown once we get to that point. But otherwise, Brandon, let's go ahead and get out of here, and we will see you all next time.
See ya.